We can do the same kind of thing when we have a rectangular equation and we can convert it to polar. So let's write down our substitutions. X equals r cosine of theta. Y equals r sine of theta. We know x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. And then we had tangent of theta equals y over x. So those are the substitutions we're allowed to make. So let's look at this first one. X squared plus y squared is equal to x. And let's make our substitutions. So we know x squared plus y squared is going to be equal to r squared. Okay, that's coming from this guy here. And then x is equal to r cosine theta. And we could simplify this by dividing both sides by r. So r equals cosine of theta. Now, if we were to graph this in rectangular form, and then we were to graph this in polar form, we're going to see those equations, graphs are going to be identical. Let's do another one. Let's look at number 72. So we have 4x squared y is equal to 1. So we're going to make our substitution for x, which is r cosine of theta. Make our substitution for y, which is r sine of theta. That's going to be equal to 1. So we have 4r squared cosine squared theta times r sine of theta is equal to 1. There's not a lot we can do to simplify this. I'm going to put the r's together. I'm just going to move that 4 to the other side. So there's our final answer there. Let's do one more. Let's do 74. We have y equals -3, so that's a horizontal line. And if we were to graph that or rewrite that in polar, we could write it like that. And sometimes in polar, they like to solve for r if they can. So we could write it that way. So let's go back and compare the graphs of the first one, and we can do all of them in Desmos, so I'm just going to focus on the first one. First one we did was number 68. We had x squared plus y squared is equal to x. That's the equation of a circle, so I've got that graphed in Desmos here. So it's a circle. It's not centered at 0, 0. We could put that in standard form and figure out where it's centered. But that's what our graph looks like. And then we graphed we found the polar equation. To graph that in Desmos, we're just graph it in terms of r and theta, and Desmos will know, hey, I want to graph this in polar. So we're going to do r equals cosine of theta. I'm just going to spell theta out, and it's going to replace it with that Greek letter. And then I can make this go from 0 to 2 pi, because it's going to ask for restrictions on theta. And you can see that that red graph and that black graph line up perfectly. So you can see how those are the same equation. So now let's go the other way. Let's say we have something that's written in polar and we want to write it in rectangular. And we're still going to use those same substitutions that we talked about earlier. X is equal to r cosine theta, y equals r sine theta, x squared plus y squared equals r squared, and the tangent of theta is equal to y over x. So those are the things we're going to keep in mind as we work through these. So let's start with number 76. So with 76, we have r is equal to sine of theta plus 1. We're going to have to do some algebraic manipulations in order to be able to make some substitutions here, because we don't have a substitution for sine of r. But if we were to multiply everything by r, we have r squared equals r sine of theta plus r. And now we've got some substitutions we can make. We know r squared is the same thing as x squared plus y squared. We know r sine of theta is equal to y. And we know r is the square root of x squared plus y squared. So there's our rectangular form. Let's do another one. Let's look at number 77. We've got r squared is equal to cosine of theta. Again, we don't have a substitution for cosine of theta, but let's multiply everything by r. And we can view that r cubed as r squared times r. And now we've got a lot of substitutions we can make. So this is x squared plus y squared. This guy is the square root of x squared plus y squared. And this is equal to x. So we have x squared plus y squared to the 3/2 power is equal to x. Let's do one more. Let's look at 78. We have r is equal to sine of theta minus cosine of theta. So if you think about what your first step's going to be, we're going to multiply everything by r. So we're going to have r squared equals to r sine theta minus r cosine of theta. So x squared plus y squared is equal to y minus x. And this guy almost is going to be a circle. So let's see if we can complete the square. X squared plus x plus y squared minus y is equal to 0. So to complete the square, we're going to take half the middle and square it. Half of 1 is 1/2. 1/2 squared is 1/4. Half of -1 is -1/2. -1/2 squared is positive 1/4. I added a 1/4 here and I added a 1/4 here, so I got to do the same thing on the other sides. And this guy is going to factor into x plus 1/2 squared, and this is going to factor into y minus 1/2 squared, and that's going to be equal to 2/4, which is the same thing as 1/2. So we can see this guy is a circle. It is centered at -1/2, 1/2, and the radius of that circle is going to be the square root of 1/2, which is square root of 2/2.